So you're in the market for a new camera and you are trying to decide between the FX3 or the FX30. But before we get into today's battle, I first want to do a little test to see if you guys can tell the difference. So the footage you're looking at right now is going to be camera A, and now you're going to be looking at camera B. Right now you are looking at two cameras side by side, camera A and camera B. One of them is the Sony FX3 and the other is the Sony FX30. During round 6 in this video, when we go over the image quality, we are going to reveal which camera is which. But I want you guys to comment down right now before you get to that part of the video and see if you guys can guess which is which. And before you just skip the video to the image quality portion, you're gonna get the most value from this video if you look at every single section, as ultimately it's gonna allow you guys to make the best decision on which one of these cameras to purchase. So let's get right into the video. So this video is going to be broken up into 6 rounds, which at the end of each round, I'm going to declare a winner or a tie if I think they pretty much do the same thing. So let's start off with round number 1, which is the price. So right now at the time of this video, the FX3 costs $3,900 and the FX30 comes in just $1,800, which is literally half the price of the FX3. So if you're trying to stay budget conscious, this is already a huge deal because you are literally paying half price for a very, very similar camera. In addition, lenses for an APS-C sensor, which we'll get to later in this video, also typically cost a bit less than full frame lenses. So once you throw in a few lenses into the whole mix as well, you guys are going to be able to save quite a bit of money going with the FX30. So with that all being said, it's a pretty obvious winner. The price definitely goes to the FX30. All right, so round number 2, we're going to talk about the recording capabilities of these cameras. Now, before I get into all of these features, I know what you guys are going to say.
Oh, well, the FX3 is a much more expensive camera, so of course it's going to have much better recording settings.
Well, not by much. Both of these cameras shoot at 10-bit 422, and yes, both of these cameras can shoot 4K at 120 frames per second. The only downside with 120 frames per second on the FX30 is you are going to get a cropped image. The only main difference that I could find on the recording capabilities is that the FX30 has a significantly higher crop in 4K 120, almost at 1.5x, which is pretty significant considering that this is already an APS-C sensor, compared to just a small slight crop on the Sony FX3. So really when it comes down to recording capabilities, there's gonna be a slight advantage to the FX3, just giving it a little bit of a better look on the 4K 120 frames per second. So just because of that, I am going to have to give a point to the FX3, but I want you guys to keep in mind that this is such a slim advantage that it might not be worth the double price just for that feature alone. So moving into round 3, we are going to go over the sensor size of both of these cameras. So guys, this is the FX30 that I'm holding in my hand, and you'll see that the sensor is pretty tiny compared to a full frame sensor. That's because this is an APS-C crop sensor. Essentially, the easiest way to explain it is that the eye on the FX3 is going to be about 1.5x bigger than the sensor on an APS-C sensor, which is the FX30. This is going to be the main difference between these two cameras. And before I go ahead and give a winner to one of the two, let me first explain the positives of a full frame sensor. The first big advantage to a full frame sensor is you are going to get better low light performance because you're going to be able to capture more light, again because it's a bigger eye of the camera, so it's just able to capture a lot more data when it comes to exposure. The second big advantage is going to be the depth of field. You see, basically because you have a bigger eye and you're farther back and you can take more advantage of whatever lens is on the camera, you're actually going to get more of a blurry background, shall we say, or depth of field, mainly again because you have a bigger eye and that it's much farther back on the lens. Now, with that all being said, there's also some advantages to having an APS-C sensor, one of which, of course, is going to be the price, and being able to use APS-C sensor lenses, being able to shoot at the camera's full capabilities is another advantage as well. It's typically going to cost significantly less than buying full-frame lenses. So basically, your money goes a lot farther with an APS-C sensor compared to a full-frame sensor. In addition, there's a lot of Hollywood movies filmed on APS-C Super 35 sensors, and you still get a very cinematic look. So don't be scared away from an APS-C sensor. And due to it having its own advantages, I'm actually going to give it a tie to the FX3 and the FX30, because honestly, guys, it comes down to personal preference. It really comes down to what you're going to be shooting, what you're going to be using the camera for, and of course, what your budget is. But yeah, I'm not going to give a point in either direction because I truly believe that both sizes of sensors come with their own advantages. So moving into round 4, we're going to be talking about the buttons, layout, and the system of the cameras. And well, guys, they're literally identical. They both have an identical button layout. They both have an identical user interface. They both work with the XLR input attachment for the top, and they both come with the same touchscreen. The only difference between the two is actually going to be the touchscreen on the back of each one of these cameras. And the funny winner to the comparison of the screens is actually the FX30. So because the FX30 is a newer camera, it has a total of 2.36 million dots compared to the FX3, which only has 1.44 million dots on its screen. So since these things are identical in every single way, and the only difference is that the screen is pretty much twice as good and sharp on the FX30 compared to the FX3, I'm actually going to give the winner of this round to the FX30. So moving into round number 5, we're going to be going over lens compatibility. So as I already mentioned earlier in this video, the FX30 is an APS-C, so you're going to want to use APS-C lenses on this camera. Now, the cool thing is that you can actually use full frame lenses on an APS-C, no problem at all. You just need to factor in a 1.5 inch crop, which means that if you're shooting on, let's say, a 24 millimeter, you'll really be shooting at a focal length of around 36. Now, you can also use APS-C lenses on the FX3, but the issue with this is that you would need to crop in at 1.5x, and you're not going to be able to take advantage of the full resolution on that full frame camera. So really, it's best to just stick with using full frame lenses on the FX3. Now, you could argue and say that the FX30 would win this round just due to the fact that it can pretty much shoot at its full resolution capabilities on both types of lenses, but there are also lots of advantages being able to use a full frame sensor on a full frame native lens, because you're going to be able to take advantage of the full aperture capabilities of these lenses, creating better low light effects and a better depth of field. And a lot of the higher end G Master lenses and Cine glass that is on the market today is going to be in a full frame format. So if you see yourself wanting to use full frame lenses anytime soon and wanting to be able to use these things natively on a full frame camera, then you're going to want to go with the FX3. With that all being said, I'm going to give this round a tie because there are advantages and disadvantages to both of the cameras. Moving into our final round, round 6, we're going to go over the image quality of both of these cameras. So before we get into the details of the image quality, let's go ahead and reveal which camera is which. So if you guys guessed it correct, camera A is the FX3 and camera B is the FX30. Let me know down in the comments if you guys got it right or if it was too hard to tell. For the FX3, I used a 24 millimeter 1.4 G Master, but I shot at an aperture of 1.8. And for the FX30, I used the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8, and of course shot at an aperture of 1.8. The only difference I could really tell, and really you have to look very closely on each one of these cameras, is going to be the depth of field. I saw a little bit more of a blurry background on the FX3 compared to the FX30, but honestly guys, if I wasn't looking at both of them side by side, it would be very difficult to tell. So yes, the FX3 would technically win this round, but again, this comes down to personal opinion and it is extremely subjective. effective. But ultimately, it really comes down to if you guys are willing to spend double the price on the body of this camera for the advantages that I mentioned throughout this video. And I'd like to leave you guys with a few questions that you should ask yourself when making this purchase. Number one, where do you see yourself as a filmmaker in the next 5 years? Because if you're unsure, then maybe it's better to save the money and get the FX30. Number two, how much experience do you have with filmmaking in general? If it's not a lot and you have a lot to learn, then maybe the FX30 is also the better choice. And number three, do you have $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 laying around for the FX3 and all of its additional lenses? That is a personal question, but again, because that's a pretty big chunk of change. But to the contrary of all of those questions, if you're an experienced filmmaker, you want to play with full frame lenses, you know that this is something that you want to do over the next 5 years, and this is going to be a tool to allow you to make more money and level up your career in the filmmaking world, then the FX3 might be the better choice. If you guys enjoyed this head-to-head battle, please make sure to leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. I also just launched a course on how to make money as a filmmaker, teaching everything that you need to know to scale from $0 to $10,000 per month. And for the first 20 people that join can use my code JUD50 for 50% off. If you guys want more information, check the description. And as always, guys, peace out.